Today we're going to explore this forgotten enigma in Stephen King's career, one that has all the core essentials to perfect storytelling. You know, life and death, love and hate, conflict and struggle, ghosts and psychics? I mean, what's not to love? Let's talk about it. Enter the gloomy world of Rose Red, a 2002 miniseries written by Stephen King that was originally intended to be a loose remake of Robert Wise's 1963 supernatural horror, The Haunting. But due to creative differences with Steven Spielberg, the project was shelved, and when The Haunting was eventually remade in 1999, King revised the script during his recovery from a vehicle collision that same year. He incorporated elements from the book it was based on while drawing further inspiration from the Winchester Mystery House, a mansion in San Jose, California that became known for its alleged hauntings, yet was historically more iconic for its endless improvised construction process that ceased upon the owner's death, a plot point we'll come back to later. How good it is depends on your interest in very old-school haunted house stories, and your tolerance for a 4-hour series where we don't actually get to the house until the second half of the story. But despite the series going into complete obscurity, you'll be surprised to know that Rose Red was a very successful show. Premiering in January 2002, Rose Red was a major ratings hit for ABC, attracting an impressive 18.5 million viewers thanks to its $200,000 marketing campaign, which included commissioning suspense and children's author Ridley Pearson to write a tie-in novel under the pseudonym of the show's main character, Dr. Joyce Reardon. It became a bestseller under the assumption that King or his wife Tabitha had written it, and it led to its own prequel TV movie that's kinda redundant considering the show explains the entire backstory on several occasions. For context, the show was about Professor Reardon leading a group of psychics through Rose Red Mansion in hopes of collecting data that would scientifically prove paranormal phenomena. And naturally, all hell breaks loose.
You're not there. You're dead.
The tie-in novel called The Diary of Ellen Rimbauer, My Life at Rose Red was inspired by the recent success of the Blair Witch Project, by claiming it was based on true events as if the pseudo-author Joyce Reardon had edited the diary herself. And that also includes ABC creating a website for the fictional Beaumont University, which of course led to many inquiries at the time by curious individuals. The book tells the story of, would you guess it, Ellen Rimbauer, a young submissive wife to an arrogant oil tycoon who was emotionally, physically, and sexually abusive to her, leading to Ellen doubting her sexuality as she becomes intimate with her housemaid Sakina, and over time she grows increasingly hateful towards men. Later on, it's revealed the house is cursed because, duh, it's built on a Native American burial ground, obviously, resulting in ghostly hauntings and several deaths, including that of her husband under circumstances left relatively unaddressed, until Ellen and Sakina mysteriously vanish in the years that follow. In the book, you're not really led to assume much as the focus is always on Ellen's tragic life as an oppressed woman in an early 1900s male-dominated society, so given it's from her perspective, she's the victim. But in the miniseries, she's actually the villain because it's revealed that she and Sakina murdered John by bollocking him out the window. So, with the backstory aside, is this 4-hour series worth your time? Well, as pretentious as it will sound, it's not just about the ghosts. It's more about the relationship people have with the paranormal or those that believe in the paranormal. The central conflict hovers around Joyce's personal mission to prove the existence of the paranormal, and regardless of whether you choose to believe it or not, the story aims to humanize her belief and the portrayal of paranormal research. For obvious reasons, it gets a substantially bad reputation amongst scientific academia due to its socially defined implausibility, but as Joyce herself describes it,
is that reality is not always quantifiable. Our inability to count, weigh, sort, or photograph some things does not mean that those things are non-existent.
That's the premise the show subscribes to, whereas we get caught up in this skepticism over the paranormal because it's yet to be physically proven. In fact, the amazing James Randi even made a career over debunking psychics and the paranormal by offering $1 million to anyone who can demonstrate it to him. What's important to Rose Red's characters is that they're not eccentric loony bin caricatures. They all feel like real conflicted people who are genuinely trying to have open-minded discourse, a practice that the internet has never heard of. Joyce isn't deluded or quirky, she's simply trying to educate people about a niche that's otherwise lampooned by skeptics in a world established to be so deeply judgmental and cynical. It even shows her going through the applicants and rejecting the phony psychics wrapped in narcissism just to reinforce the reality of her situation. And I guess there's also a subtle irony in how the actual psychics find the paranormal aspects of the house unbelievable.
That's impossible, isn't it?
That's Rose Red, sweetheart.
Joyce is at odds against her department chair, Professor Carl Miller, who attempts to disprove her research using the campus reporter and future McPoyle, Kevin Bollinger. Yet, as an academic, you would think Miller would have better things to do with his time. I mean, Joyce's class is clearly popular, so the university would technically favour her because despite the skepticism, it's still a legitimate field of enquiry regardless of its nature. The cherry on top, however, is how insecure Joyce actually is about her research, and as the scrutiny intensifies, so does her declining mental state.
Skin. Smooth and rational. Every cause has its effect, and every effect can be predicted with the right database at hand. But there's a world under that world, Carl. Blood under the skin. That's what rationalistic asses like you never see. It's a world that's liquid instead of solid, hot instead of just warm. It is a world full of mysteries. You don't like it, do you?
Okay, maybe I take back the part I said about the eccentric loony bin. Obviously, there is no doubt over whether the supernatural elements are real. It's very blunt about its existence, so let's talk about the psychics. Each psychic has their own individual trait and personality. You have Victor with his precognition, the ability to see into the future, disputed by skeptics as going against causality in that how can there be an effect without a cause. Kathy, an automatic writer, the ability to write subconsciously through spiritual forces, disproven using the ideomotor effect, where it's just a muscular reaction, possibly influenced by suggestion. Nick, who can do remote viewing, where he can sense without actually using senses, basically that scene from Ghostbusters. Pan, who has psychometric abilities, which essentially means she can touch an object and obtain its history, like the power that Shaggy has in 13 Ghosts. Then we have who I think gives by far the best performance, and that's Emery, played by Matt Ross, or Gavin Belson for those that watch a lot of HBO. Emery has retrocognition, where he can learn information about past events without conventional means, disputed literally by claiming he did his research. Naturally, he's the one that has a weird relationship with his mother because it's a Stephen King thing, but at least she's not an alcoholic, so that's a step in the right direction, I suppose.
Now listen to me. If anything happens that you can't handle, anything beyond a few telesmic manifestations, call me and I'll come and get you.
Oh, well, Mom, I have to go.
Finally, you have Annie, an autistic teenager with telekinetic powers, which means she can lift things. She also has the ability to summon rocks by drawing pictures of her target, so she's like a supernatural substitute for a military drone, essentially. Oh yeah, and then I suppose you also have Annie's older sister Rachel and Steven, who's like a descendant of the Rimbauer family, but they're super dull characters. In fact, this dude retired from acting a few years back to focus on a science career because he wasn't getting enough work as an actor. I mean, it didn't help that he wasn't very good at it.
I'll do anything. Look good in a bathing suit, look great in one of those French maid's outfits.
Come in, you idiot, and close the door.
Yeah, he seems like a bundle of charm. Right, once we get the personal conflict out of the way, establish the characters, and give long-winded exposition, is it actually scary? Kinda? I think if anything, it's certainly creepy. Well, Evil Dead levels of creepy, if that's something to go on. I think the most haunting concept of Rose Red's history is that construction never finished before all the occupants disappeared, but ever since, it somehow still continued to expand. Ellen believed that to remain immortal, she had to keep constructing the house, hence the reference to the Winchester Mystery House where the widow owner Sarah continued construction as a way of coping with the depression she faced after her husband's death from tuberculosis. With Ellen, it's more so to empower herself from a lifetime of hardship, so it's left open to interpretation if the intention is purely evil or if there's a seemingly innocent motive behind it. After all, when the dead victims come back at the end, they proclaim the afterlife is some incredible experience, but then again, that could just be total manipulation. So basically, because of the supernatural construction, shall we say, nobody is able to account for the number of rooms or corridors in the internal architecture, which plays into the inescapable nightmarish vibe of the mansion. And this isn't some haunted house in the arsehole of nowhere, it sits right in the middle of the populated city of Seattle. Yet somehow, just through crane shots alone, you can definitely sense that it exists in its own time capsule, completely untouched. As a result, it still feels isolating and oppressive, just like Ellen's experiences living in the house. Once the group get to the house in the second half of the series, since we only have a vague idea at this point what lurks inside, the haunting is dropped on us almost immediately. Especially that weeping angel statue that causes Victor to have a heart attack, and the fact that we don't see what he sees leaves the horror up to your imagination. And there is a lot that happens here. We have Emery's mother looking for him while Carl comes looking for Kevin, who went missing, but he clearly isn't human anymore. And then, oh no, the ghost of Sakina appears and now Emery is lost in the house and ends up running into the Crypt Keeper while the autistic girl locks them all in the house because the plot says so, causing the doors to slam and cutting off Emery's fingers. There is a lot that happens in the course of 25 minutes, and it astronomically reverses everything you've come to expect from what is quite a slow-moving story. Before all this, the hauntings are all based on rumour and speculation, bar a few supernatural implications. But to discover that these are not just ghosts, but pretty grotesque-looking things that turn victims into threats exceeds even Joyce's rather modest expectations. At this point, we get what is probably the most exciting part of the miniseries, where there's a lot of blink and you'll miss it scares, mixed with Joyce's decline into desperation and borderline insanity, resulting in a sort of tragic victim of her own creation. For me personally, I still think the most frightening scene is still the carpet monster that's quite jarringly presented, but admittedly, a lot of the horror kind of feels like this, which I guess makes sense given the house begins to change and it leaves you questioning whether it's physical or psychological.
Surprise, motherfucker!
That said, given we're talking about Stephen King, there are still some very odd moments, like this one.
That's for scaring me all those years ago, and for trying to make me take the hammer.
What the fuck?
Help me. Help us. Help Rose Red. Help us build. Steve, no, please don't take it.
Oh no, don't do it, Steve. Who gives a shit? Yeah, it gets pretty weird. So, I'm going to leave it there to let you decide whether you're curious enough to give it a try. It's clear by now I review a lot of schlocky shit on this channel, yet this is one where underneath all the terrible performances and B-movie elements is a super decent Stephen King story. It definitely doesn't need to be 4 hours long, considering most of it is filler details that, yes, at least enrich the plot, but that doesn't necessarily progress it. It's like The Shining, Pet Sematary, and The Dead Zone all rolled into one, and I think the conversation it has about parapsychology, the paranormal, and the stigma between science and belief makes for an engaging thematic presence. Rose Red isn't afraid to take its time to build an authentic sense of history through a remarkable level of detail, and it makes the house's existence surrounding the world of the new millennium feel like a palpable relic of the past. One where love and hatred never die. Except for Victor. Victor totally dies. Hi everyone, thanks for watching. The dog was just really curious, so now he's climbed on top of me here while I was recording. Let me know in the comments below what your favourite Stephen King story is, and as always, if you enjoyed the show and you want to support it all, get early access and vote on future videos, you can do so by heading over to Patreon and checking out the cool little rewards I might have for you. And as always, if you like my shenanigans and you want to keep up to date, please do follow me over on Twitter, and yeah, until next time, stay safe and I'll see you all very soon. Bye! Say bye, Barney. Goodbye.